All right, guys. I must say that the last few days have been obviously excruciatingly painful, but they've also been exceedingly fascinating. Just from a political perspective, because we talked about how the Democrats are basically at civil war with each other over the progressive wing of the party and the Sanders slash AOC slash Rashida Tlaib far left wing, and the so-called centrist Democrats basically blaming each other for why the election didn't go the way that they wanted it to go with no blue wave. But on the Republican side, obviously it has been just as fascinating as we have seen an obvious divide and infighting among anti-Trump Republicans and Trump supporting Republicans slash conservatives. So that to me again is just a very fascinating dynamic, and it looks like the leader of the anti-Trump Republicans, like Mitt Romney, who is coming out and leading the charge in terms of trying to basically get the Republican Party past this election. And, he's even come out and congratulated Joe Biden and Kamala Harris on their victory, and has also said there is no evidence of voter fraud. But he has also said that President Trump still has a place in the GOP as well. But before we get into that, my name is Greg Foreman, and you're watching A Black Conservative Perspective. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share A Black Conservative Perspective, aka a leftist worst nightmare. You can also follow me on Twitter at GForemanBCP. Let's get it. All right, guys. So Mitt Romney did an interview on NBC where he talked about his thoughts following the election, and obviously he discussed President Trump a lot. Take a listen.
Well, I learned that Republicans picked up seats in Congress, held on to the Senate, picked up state houses across the country, but we lost the presidency. And so it's a bit of a mixed message. I think people are saying that conservative principles still account for the majority of public opinion in our country. I don't think the American people want to sign up for the Green New Deal. I don't think they want to sign up for getting rid of coal or oil or gas. I don't think they're interested in Medicare for all or higher taxes that would slow down the economy. But they do want to see a change in leadership in the White House, apparently, at this stage. And so it's a message which says, all right, a change in leader, but we're not going to be turning a sharp left turn in terms of public policy.
What would you like to see President Trump do this week? You've been here. You've lost an election. You've lost a close election. In fact, in some ways, I feel like there's some similarities, and it was very tight in various battleground states, just like yours in 2012. How would you like to see President Trump handle the week going forward?
Well, the way I would handle the week and the way President Trump would handle the week will be different because we're very different people. We're not going to change President Trump or his nature in the waning days of the presidency. And so I don't think I'm going to be giving him advice as to what to do. Clearly, people in the past, like myself, who've lost elections, have gone out in a way that said, look, I know the eyes of the world are on us. The eyes of our own people are on the institutions that we have. The eyes of history are on us. And in a setting like this, we want to preserve something which is far more important than ourselves or even our party. And that is preserve the cause of freedom and democracy here and around the world. But the president's going to do what he has traditionally done, what he's doing now. I don't think that's going to be a surprise for anybody. And by the way, he has every right to call for recounts, because we're talking about a margin of 10,000 votes here or less in some cases. And so a recount could change the outcome. He wants to look at irregularities, pursue that in the court. But if, as expected, those things don't change the outcome, why, he will accept the inevitable.
Is there a point where pursuing that strategy undermines the democracy?
Well, I'm more concerned about the language that's used. I think it's fine to pursue every legal avenue that one has, but I think one has to be careful in the choice of words. I think when you say that the election was corrupt or stolen or rigged, that's unfortunately rhetoric that gets picked up by authoritarians around the world. And I think it also discourages confidence in our democratic process here at home. And with the battle going on right now between authoritarianism and freedom, why I think it's very important that we not use language which can encourage a course in history which would be very, very unfortunate.
And maybe this seems obvious to maybe you and I, but there were people whose ballot may have voted for Joe Biden and may have voted for, say, may have voted for a Republican state Senate candidate in New Hampshire. It certainly looks like, to me, that happened. So if you're saying one vote is rigged, are you also saying the other votes are rigged?
Well, I think that's a pretty fair point. And actually, I understand by watching Rick Santorum the other day that actually the president did better in Philadelphia this cycle than he did 4 years ago in terms of the percentage of the vote he received. So there are some arguments which augur against suggesting that the election is going to get reversed. But at the same time, I think you make an important point, which is a lot of Republicans, a lot of voters voted for Republicans, but did not vote for the president. And that suggests to me that conservative principles are still in the majority in our country.
You're talking about, you feel good about the fact that you say there's a majority in this country that wants conservative principles, but your party took a beating in the suburbs, and that's why it looks like you may not win Georgia. And if that is a pattern, you might not control the Senate because of that. Do you believe your party has a problem in the suburbs?
Well, my party, I'm sure, has challenges, as does the opposition party. But I think I'll let people like yourself make a call as to why people voted the way they did. But I think if you look at the numbers and look at the pickup that Republicans had in state houses across the country, in Congress, and holding the Senate so far, versus our loss in the presidency, you'd suggest that the presidential race was more a matter of a referendum on a person, and that when it came to policy, we did pretty well. So as I look at what's going to happen in Georgia, this will be a race primarily about policy. I don't think the American people want to sign up for the Green New Deal and for Medicare for all and so forth. So,
is this still Donald Trump's Republican Party?
Well, he is without question the most powerful voice in our party. He will have an enormous impact on our party going forward. I believe the great majority of people who voted for Donald Trump want to make sure that his principles and his policies are pursued. So yeah, I mean he's not disappearing by any means. He's the 900-pound gorilla when it comes to the Republican Party.
I'm laughing because it is apparently obvious that Mitt Romney does not like President Trump. He does not like President Trump. And it makes me wonder, what has President Trump done to Mitt Romney to make Mitt Romney hate him so much? I mean, he must have pissed in his Cheerios or something. But let's break down some things Mitt Romney is saying here, because I think it's important to look into it and to be fair to him. Okay? Essentially what he's saying is that this election was not a referendum on the Republican Party as much as it was a referendum on just one person. And he's saying that to be President Donald Trump. And he cites his reasoning for this is that Republicans did well in the House and the Senate despite the expectations for them to get basically blown out. Now, my counter argument to Mitt is that this election is not over, despite the media calling the election. No electoral votes have been casted. And the Trump team is saying that they have evidence that suggests there is some widespread voter fraud and abnormalities going on in this election that need to be looked at, which I'm going to display to you guys in a little bit. But I want to make sure I cover everything Mitt Romney is saying. So I think that Mitt Romney is kind of putting the cart before the horse here by congratulating Joe Biden and Kamala Harris despite President Trump and the Trump team saying that they're going to try to challenge this in court. And I'm saying this because I think it's a deadly political miscalculation. He has to understand that at this point, there's a large majority of the party that is upset and discontent with how this election went. And they really feel at their hearts that this election did not go the way they wanted because of fraud, okay? Now, whether you agree with that or not, as somebody who's the so-called leader, I think it's important that you carefully choose your words in the sense that you probably shouldn't come out and congratulate Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as if they've already won when, again, officially no electoral votes have been casted and there's going to be recounts and legal challenges. So, Mitt Romney is trying to act like he's above the fray here, but I really think he's doing a disservice to his constituents that could hurt him politically, and this is not something that he has to do right now. That's just my opinion on it. So let's take a look at what President Trump's campaign team and his legal team is saying in terms of the evidence that they have and how they're going to challenge this in court.
The people you see behind me are just a few of about, I'd say, 50 to 60 poll watchers who will all testify that they were uniformly deprived of their right to inspect any single part of the mail-in ballots. As you know, from the very beginning, the mail-in ballots were a source of some degree of skepticism, if not a lot of skepticism, as being innately prone to fraud. The New York Times had written that 10 years ago under other circumstances, but of course changed their mind once it was a situation involving President Trump. Congresswoman Jordan, in her vast and compendious review of various forms of voter fraud, cited mail-in ballots as the most prone to fraud. With all that, you would have expected there'd be a high degree of security and a high degree of inspection that would be provided for mail-in ballots. Instead, in the wisdom of the officials, Democrat officials here in a city that's been Democrat for 60 years and has a very long history of voter fraud, documented history of voter fraud, instead of going to a high degree of care to allow inspections of the mail-in ballots, there was no inspection of a single mail-in ballot. Those mail-in ballots could have been for anybody. Those mail-in ballots could have been for anybody they wrote in. Those mail-in ballots could have been written the day before by the Democratic Party hacks that were all over the convention center. What I'm saying to you is not a single one was inspected as the law required. Even when a court order was obtained to allow the Republican inspectors to get 6 feet closer, they moved the people counting the ballots 6 further feet away. Kind of funny that all Republicans were rejected here and all Republicans were rejected in Pittsburgh, and it amounts to about, just about the 700,000 votes that President Trump was ahead by 2 days ago that disappeared. And we have no way of knowing, because we were deprived of the right to inspect, if a single one of those ballots is legitimate.
Yes, there has been a massive and coordinated effort to steal this election from we, the people of the United States of America, to delegitimize and destroy votes for Donald Trump, to manufacture votes for Joe Biden. They have done it in every way imaginable, from having dead people vote in massive numbers to absolutely fraudulently creating ballots that exist only voting for Biden. We've identified at least 450,000 ballots in the key states that miraculously only have a mark for Joe Biden on them and no other candidate. If you look at Florida, where things were done right, you can see that that's how the rest of the country should have gone. But they also used an algorithm to calculate the votes they would need to flip, and they used the computers to flip those votes from Trump to Biden, and from other Republican candidates to their competitors also. I think Doug Collins had the race stolen from him. I think John James had his race stolen from him. It wasn't just President Trump. There were many people affected by this. We have got to fight tooth and nail in federal court to expose this abject fraud and the conspiracy behind it, and get a recount and audits in every place it's needed, which is, frankly, most of the country.
So there are recounts going on right now. We know that in Georgia, you have a list of numbers of ballots with only Joe Biden on the ticket. You say it's 98,000 ballots in Pennsylvania, 80 to 90,000 in Georgia, another 42,000 in Arizona, 69 to 115,000 in Michigan, and 62,000 in Wisconsin. Sidney, if this is true, this appears systemic. Where is the Department of Justice? Where is the AG Bill Barr? If this is so obvious, then why aren't we seeing massive government investigations?
I don't know. We definitely should be. I mean, we're getting reports of all kinds of fraud. We've got getting an affidavit from a postal worker now who talks about having been ordered to backdate ballots. No ballots received after the polls closed on voting day should even be counted. We've got multiple states that didn't even follow the rules of their own legislature. That's a federal constitutional issue. There are at least 3 major federal issues here that will require the Supreme Court to resolve this case. And when the votes are really audited and the real votes are counted, Trump will win. He is the president, and he is in charge of this country.
All right, guys, so you heard it there. So the Trump campaign and the Trump team has said they have sufficient evidence there have been voter fraud and abnormalities with this election that they feel can make a strong case in court to help change the outcome of this election. And they're also saying that more lawsuits are coming and that they're currently examining things and going about the legal process in order to try to change the apparent outcome of this election, in which the media has called for Joe Biden. Now, it remains to be seen exactly how that's going to go. But I will say this. I think it's fair to at least give the Trump campaign a chance. Give them a chance. If they say there's voter fraud, hey, as somebody that's a supporter of the Trump presidency, I hope he is right. But at the same time, it is incumbent upon him to provide sufficient evidence in order to change the outcome. It is incumbent upon him to prove it, okay? I mean, I get it. I hear what they're saying. And I'm not saying I disagree with it. I want to believe you. Now you got to provide evidence. Now we have to take it to court. We have to win, and we have to have this outcome changed. Okay? So that's basically where I'm at with this. And I think at this point, the real question that a lot of anti-Trump Republicans have is President Trump acting in bad faith with lawsuits for an election that he knows deep down inside that he lost fair and square? Now, I don't think it's possible to know. I think that President Trump probably feels like a part of the election day irregularities, you also had the overtly biased media coverage that happened leading up to the election where everything on the left was ignored. Biden was never hit with any hard questions. He was never questioned about anything. He was never fact-checked about anything. And President Trump got an overwhelmingly majority amount of the negative press coverage and what seemed to be an obvious slant against him from the media. I mean, and I think that's obvious. So I think a part of it is not just what happened on Election Day, but a part of it is what's been happening in the media up until Election Day, and also what's been happening over his whole presidency where, again, they try to accuse him of working with Russia and being a Russian plant and a Manchurian candidate. You know, I think he just feels like this whole election was just unfair to him. I really do think that that's how he feels. But regardless of that, if President Trump and his team have real concrete evidence, and it does make it to the Supreme Court, they do have a 6-3 majority in their favor. However, Chief Justice John Roberts has come out and said multiple times that he is concerned first and foremost about preserving the institution and legitimacy of the Supreme Court, and he wants to make sure the court stays above partisan politics. So I'm not necessarily sure if that is going to be as big as an advantage as people try to make it out to be. So ultimately what that really means is that the evidence really needs to be strong, legit, and concrete, like, you know, a lot of us out here feel that the president has, and he needs to present that, and we just have to let the legal process play out. But at the end of the day, conservatives are ultimately correct in the fact that this election is not over and that the mainstream media does not decide who the president of the United States is. They do not decide that. At the end of the day, it comes down to when the votes are actually cast by the electorate, the state electorate, and that's how the process goes. And apparently, it looks like the courts are going to play a part in that process as well. So we'll see how it goes. But let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.